There is power in silence, in stepping back, in saying nothing when the world expects you to fight for a place you already deserve. Rejection stings, being ignored burns, but only if you let it. The truth is, every dismissal, every overlooked moment, every time someone fails to see your worth is not a reflection of you. It's a revelation of them. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't shrink to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. Instead, you rise, not through noise, but through undeniable presence. Let them underestimate you, let them walk away, let them believe they've won. Because in the silence of your absence, they will hear the echo of your worth. And one day, when they finally see what they turned away from, they won't just regret it, they'll beg for what they once ignored. But by then, you'll have already moved beyond their reach. Silence is misunderstood. We live in a world that tells us to speak up, to fight for attention, to prove our worth by how loudly we can demand it. But true power is knowing when to step back, when to stay silent, and when to let the absence of your energy do the speaking for you. Silence is not submission. It is not weakness. It is a statement, a bold, undeniable force that carries more weight than any argument ever could. Think about the moments when someone ignored you, dismissed you, made you feel unseen. It stung, didn't it? The instinct is to react, to prove yourself, to force them to recognize what they've overlooked. But here's the truth. When you fight to be seen by those who refuse to acknowledge your value, you give them power. You hand them control over how you feel, how you see yourself, and how you move forward. What if instead you stepped back? What if instead of reacting, you let your silence say everything? Silence forces reflection. It unsettles people. It shifts the balance. When someone expects a reaction and receives nothing, they are left to sit with their own actions, their own decisions, their own mistakes. And in that space, they begin to understand what they took for granted. That's where power lies. Not in proving your worth to those who don't see it, but in making them feel the void when you're no longer there. Think about the most powerful individuals in any space. Leaders, creators, visionaries. They don't beg for attention. They don't chase approval. They don't fight to be recognized. They walk away from places, people, and opportunities that do not align with their worth. And in doing so, they command a presence that is undeniable. Their silence is not passive, it is intentional. It says, I do not need to be here. I do not need to convince you. I know my value, and that is enough. And that right there is the hardest lesson to learn, because we are wired to seek validation. We want closure. We want people to recognize when they've wronged us. We want them to see what they lost. But the most powerful revenge is not anger. It is not confrontation. It is indifference. It is the quiet strength of someone who knows that walking away is not losing. It is winning on a level most people will never understand. When you step back, you reclaim your energy. You redirect it toward yourself, your growth, your future. And the moment you stop giving your presence to those who take it for granted, something incredible happens. They notice. They feel the void. They question. Because silence is deafening when it replaces what was once constant. And by the time they understand what they lost, you will have already outgrown them. So the next time someone ignores you, dismisses you, underestimates you, do not argue, do not explain, do not beg to be seen. Step back, stay silent, and watch how they eventually realize what they let slip away. Because silence is not just the absence of words, it is the presence of strength. Rejection stings. It cuts deeper than we expect, leaving behind this lingering question, why wasn't I enough? We replay conversations, analyze moments, search for the flaw in ourselves that made someone overlook us, dismiss us, or walk away. It's human nature to want to be chosen, to be valued, to be recognized. But the truth, the hard, unshakable truth, is that rejection is rarely about you. It's about alignment, it's about timing, it's about the spaces you were never meant to shrink yourself to fit into. Think about the times you've felt ignored, unappreciated, unseen. In those moments, it's easy to internalize the pain, to let someone else's inability to recognize your worth define how you see yourself. But that is where most people get stuck, mistaking rejection as a reflection of their value rather than a redirection towards something greater. You see, rejection is not an ending, it is a pivot. It is the universe's way of clearing the path, removing the wrong doors, so you don't waste time knocking on them. Some of the greatest successes, the most life-altering breakthroughs, were born out of rejection. People who were told they weren't good enough, smart enough, talented enough, only to turn that dismissal into the very fuel that propelled them forward. The difference between those who crumble under rejection and those who rise because of it is perspective. One sees it as a final verdict. The other sees it as a sign to keep moving, to keep searching, to trust that what is meant for them will never require begging to be seen. Imagine if every rejection you've ever faced was actually protecting you, removing people who were never meant to walk beside you. Think about it. How many times have you wanted something so badly, only to realize later that it would have limited you, held you back, made you less of who you were meant to be? That relationship that didn't work out. That opportunity you didn't get, that person who didn't appreciate you. In the moment, it felt like a loss. But now, with distance, you see it clearly. It was a lesson, a redirection, a divine intervention, even if it didn't feel like one at the time. The most dangerous thing you can do is chase people who have already shown you they don't see your worth. Trying to prove yourself to those who don't value you is like watering a dead plant. It drains you, it exhausts you, and in the end, it changes nothing. The moment you stop seeking validation from those who refuse to give it, you set yourself free, you reclaim your energy. You walk away, not because you weren't enough, but because you finally realize that you always were. You will be ignored, you will be underestimated, you will face closed doors and unanswered calls. But none of that is a sign to shrink. None of that is a reason to doubt yourself. Instead, let it fuel you. Let it sharpen your vision. Let it be the push that drives you towards something greater. Because the only people who truly lose in life are the ones who let rejection define them instead of using it to refine them. So the next time someone overlooks you, let them. The next time a door closes, don't bang on it. Walk away. Because one day those same people, those same places will look up and realize what they let slip away. And by then, you'll be far beyond their reach. We live in a world that glorifies the spotlight. We are told that visibility equals success, that being seen means being valued. But what if the most important work, the most transformative growth happens in the moments when no one is watching? What if the silence, the solitude, the setbacks, what if they are not signs of failure, but proof that something greater is being built within you? It is in the shadows that strength is forged. The most powerful people, the ones who truly leave a mark on the world, did not become who they are because they were constantly validated, constantly praised, constantly in the light. No, they became who they are because they learned to embrace the silence. They learned to be unseen without losing faith in themselves. They understood that greatness is not measured by how many people are clapping for you. It is measured by how much you are willing to build when no one is looking. Think about the caterpillar. It spends its entire existence crawling, unseen, moving slowly with no sign of transformation. And then one day it disappears into a cocoon, a space of absolute darkness, of stillness, of waiting. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. But inside everything is changing. It is breaking apart, reforming, becoming something new. And then, when the time is right, it emerges, stronger, freer, completely unrecognizable from what it once was. Your life works the same way. The moments when you feel ignored, when you feel unseen, when you feel like the world has turned its back on you, those are the moments when transformation is taking place. But most people don't trust the process. They panic in the silence. They want immediate validation, immediate results. And because they don't see progress, they assume they are failing. But real growth is not loud. It is not instant. It is quiet, slow, deliberate. And when it finally reveals itself, the world will have no choice but to take notice. So many people waste their energy trying to prove themselves before they are ready. They chase validation instead of mastery. They seek attention instead of evolution. And in doing so, they miss the most important part of the journey, the becoming. Because it is not success that changes you. It is the work, it is the discipline, it is the ability to trust that even when no one sees your effort, it still matters. History has proven this time and time again. The greatest artists, the greatest leaders, the greatest minds did not rise to the top because they were instantly recognized. They spent years, sometimes decades, perfecting their craft in silence. They worked tirelessly when no one was watching, when no one believed in them, when no one cared. And then one day they emerged, undeniable, unstoppable, unshakable. The question is, will you have the patience to do the same? Will you allow yourself to grow in the shadows without needing the world to reassure you? Will you trust that the work you are doing today, even if no one sees it, is shaping the person you are becoming? Because here's the truth. When the time comes, when you finally step into the light, when the world finally sees what you have become, they will assume it happened overnight. They will think you were an instant success. They won't see the years of work, the quiet sacrifices, the moments of doubt you had to push through alone. But you will know. You will know that the real transformation happened long before anyone was watching. So if you feel unseen right now, if you feel like your efforts are going unnoticed, don't be discouraged. Be patient, keep working, keep growing, because the most powerful growth happens in the shadows. And when you finally emerge, the world will have no choice but to see you. There is an undeniable power in distance. When you remove yourself from spaces that no longer serve you, from people who refuse to value you, you begin to understand that your presence is a privilege, not something to be wasted on those who fail to see it. And in that realization, you reclaim a power that was always yours to begin with. We often underestimate the impact of our absence. We believe that to prove our worth, we must stay, explain, convince. But the truth is, the most profound statements are made in silence. When you step back, when you refuse to beg for a seat at a table that was never meant for you, you create a void. And that void forces people to see, to feel, to understand what they once took for granted. Think about a song. The music isn't just in the notes. It's in the spaces between them, the pauses, the silence, the moments where nothing is said but everything is felt. That's what stepping back does. It forces reflection. It shifts the dynamic. It makes people realize, often too late, what they lost. But this isn't about them. This is about you. Because the moment you step back, you also begin to see things differently. You gain clarity. You remove yourself from the noise, from the need for validation, from the exhausting cycle of proving your worth. And in that space, in that silence, you rediscover yourself. Most people fear being forgotten. They fear that if they step away, they will fade into irrelevance. But the opposite is true. The most unforgettable people are the ones who knew when to walk away, who knew their value was not dependent on anyone else's recognition. They understood that distance is not disappearance, it is a declaration, a statement that says, I am no longer available for what does not honor me. And that is where the shift happens, because the moment you remove yourself, the moment you no longer fight for attention, people start to notice. They start to question. They start to remember. Why? Because human nature is wired this way. We don't value what is always accessible. We take for granted what we assume will always be there. But when it's gone, when that presence, that energy, that light is no longer available, suddenly it's all we can think about. This isn't about playing games. It's not about manipulating people into valuing you. It's about understanding that your worth does not need to be negotiated. That when you have given enough, when you have tried enough, when you have shown up again and again only to be met with indifference, the most powerful thing you can do is step back. And when you do, something incredible happens. The right people, the ones who truly see you, will reach out. They will recognize what they almost lost. And those who don't, they were never meant to stay. Let them go. Let them feel the weight of your absence. Let them learn in their own time what they once had but failed to appreciate. Because here's the truth. The people who once ignored you, the ones who dismissed you, the ones who didn't see your value, they will remember. They will replay the moments they took for granted. They will feel the emptiness where your presence used to be. And by then, you will have already moved forward, already built something greater, already become someone stronger. So don't be afraid to step back. Don't be afraid to create that space. Because in that silence and that distance is where your power is fully realized. And when they finally beg for what they once ignored, you will know you never needed their recognition to begin with. There is a moment in everyone's life when the tables turn, when the ones who dismissed you, the ones who looked past you, the ones who never believed in you, suddenly they notice. And when they do, it's not because you changed for them, it's because you changed for yourself. Because you grew in silence, built in private, and refused to be defined by their lack of recognition. It's a powerful shift, not because you need their validation, but because it confirms something you always knew deep inside. You were never invisible. They just weren't ready to see you, and now they can't ignore you. But here's where most people get it wrong. When those who once overlooked them come back, they mistake it for victory. They think, now they see me. Now they value me. Now I matter. But that's not the win. The win is realizing that their recognition was never the goal. The real success is that you became so undeniable, so complete within yourself, that their acknowledgement no longer defines you. Think about the journey you've been on, the times you felt small, the moments when your voice didn't seem to matter, the people who didn't take you seriously, who underestimated you, who walked away as if you were replaceable. Those moments weren't signs of your insignificance. They were tests. Tests to see if you would break or if you would build. And you chose to build. There's something incredibly liberating about no longer needing to be chosen, about realizing that you don't have to wait for someone else's approval to step into your power. Because when you stop waiting, when you stop chasing, you start creating. And what you create, your growth, your success, your transformation, becomes impossible to ignore. Think of the people who have left the greatest mark on the world. The artists, the visionaries, the game changers. They were all dismissed at some point. Told they weren't enough, that they wouldn't make it, that their dreams were unrealistic. But instead of shrinking, they expanded. Instead of proving themselves to people who couldn't see their worth, they proved themselves to themselves. And in doing so, they became forces that could not be denied. And now, that's you. You are the force. You are the one who kept going, who stayed committed, who found strength in silence. And now the ones who ignored you, they will be the ones who remember you. They will replay the conversations, the moments, the chances they had to see you, but didn't. They will wish they had valued you before you became something they could no longer reach. But when they come back, and they will, you have a choice. You can let them in, let them validate what you already knew about yourself, or you can keep moving. Because what you've built, who you've become, is far greater than the past that once overlooked you. And that's the real lesson here. You were never meant to beg to be seen. You were meant to rise so high that seeing you becomes inevitable. And when that moment comes, when they finally beg for what they once ignored, you will know you were always enough. They just took too long to realize it.